stand at the base of a 62-foot mound in West Virginia, with houses at your feet and a shuttered prison across the street. 2 states north, duck into a stone room built into a hillside where the sun arrives down the tunnel one morning a year in December and lands on the back wall. Nobody has explained who built either one. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why a place with a parking lot and a gift shop is still the most disputed pile of rock in America. Number 18, walls above the fields. A stone wall running uphill through timber, ending at nothing, with 90-year-old oaks grown up through the middle of it. Picture yourself at about 2,000 feet in Rockbridge County, Virginia, in the Blue Ridge foothills, well above the old pasture line. The ground is leaf litter and root. The wall is waist-high, dry-stacked, no mortar, and it climbs a grade steep enough that you're using your hands. The mainstream explanation is enormous and mostly correct. Colonial and 1800s farming generated staggering volumes of cleared stone. New England alone holds something north of 240,000 miles of it. Most walls in the East are exactly what they look like. Here's what that doesn't cover. Farm walls follow property lines, contours, and soil you can plow. A meaningful number of these don't. They terminate mid-slope on ground nobody ever farmed, and some of them incorporate boulders far too heavy to have been moved for tidiness. Researchers who study this seriously have a name for them. Problem walls. Not ancient by default, just unexplained. Number 17, quartz carried uphill. The rock in these piles did not come from the ridge the piles are sitting on. You're on an upland saddle in the Berkshire Hills of western Massachusetts, the southern end of the Appalachian chain. Push the leaves aside with your boot. Under them is white quartz sitting on top of gray bedrock. 2 different stones. One of them is not local to the slope you're standing on. Land clearing produced field piles all over this region. That's a real explanation, and it accounts for a great many of them. It runs into one thing it can't get past. Field clearing does not sort by mineral, and it does not carry material uphill. Nobody hauls white quartz up a grade because it's in the way. The Narragansett Indian Tribe's Historic Preservation Office documented these as ceremonial stone landscapes during the federal permitting review for the Algonquin gas pipeline expansion, a formal proceeding on the record with the tribe as a consulting party. The people who built them have descendants who can tell you what they are. It took a pipeline application to get it written down. Number 16, rocks that don't belong. Roughly 100 carvings cut into soapstone boulders, sitting on a gap in the North Georgia mountains. You're at about 2,000 feet in the Chattahoochee National Forest in Union County, on a low pass between 2 ridges. The Forest Service has put interpretive fencing around the boulders, so you look at them from a walkway rather than standing on them. The surfaces are gray and soft-looking, pocked with cup marks, ringed circles, straight lines, and shapes that read as footprints if you catch them in low light. The mainstream explanation is measured and reasonable. These are Cherokee carvings, or older, made by people whose descendants still live in these mountains. The age is uncertain, the meaning was never written down, and the Cherokee do not owe anybody an explanation of it. Here is what that account leaves alone. Soapstone. Does not outcrop at Track Rock Gap. There is no source in the rock underneath. Every carved boulder on that gap was brought there and set in place. Everybody looks at the carvings and calls them the mystery. The carvings are the easy part. Somebody hauled the canvas up the mountain first. Number 15. Wall without a war. An 855-foot stone wall on a mountain with no water, no farmland, and nothing to defend. You are at 2,850 feet in far northwest Georgia at Fort Mountain State Park in Murray County. Pine and mountain laurel, thin rocky soil, a summit that gets cold and wet fast. The wall snakes along the ridge, waist high in places. and there are pits spaced along its length at regular intervals. The state park's own signs decline to pick a side. They offer three options: ceremonial construction from the woodland period, prehistoric defense, or a Spanish expedition in the 1500s, and let you choose. The reason for that hedge is technical, and it is the whole problem. Dry stacked stone contains nothing organic. There is no charcoal, no wood, no bone. You cannot carbon date it. You can excavate around this wall for a season and still not know within 2,000 years when someone stacked it. Cherokee oral tradition holds that it was built by a pale-skinned people called the Moon-eyed people. That is oral tradition, and I will name it as such. The archaeological record has nothing to say either way. A state park with an entrance fee, a gift shop, and a central feature nobody can date. Everything so far sits on the surface. What comes next was engineered, enclosed, shaped, and aimed at something in the sky. Number 14. Readable. Only from above. A quarter-mile earthwork that is completely illegible from the ground and instantly obvious from 300 feet up. Stand on the walkway in Adams County, Ohio, and it's a low grass ridge, maybe 3 feet high, curving away into trees. That's it. That's all you get. The shape, a serpent, 1,348 feet from head to tail, only exists from the air. It sits on a bluff above Ohio Brush Creek. The bedrock underneath is shattered and tilted in a way that occurs nowhere else nearby. Geologists now think a meteorite hit here, hundreds of millions of years ago. Nobody recognized that until the 1900s. The solar alignment of the head, pointing at the summer solstice sunset, is broadly accepted. The date is not, and this isn't a fringe argument. One peer-reviewed study, using charcoal recovered in the 1990s, puts construction around 1070 AD. A later peer-reviewed study, using different samples, argues for roughly 300 BC. Both teams are credentialed. Both positions are published. The gap between them is 1,000 years, a national historic landmark that professional archaeologists date a millennium apart. Number 13. Carried up by hand, a 62-foot cone of earth in the middle of a town, built basket by hand. This is Grave Creek Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia. You climb a spiral path cut into the side, houses at the base, a shuttered state penitentiary directly across the street. It takes about 4 minutes to reach the top and you are winded, and you did not carry anything up. Built somewhere around 200 BC by the people archaeologists call the Adena. It is the largest mound of its kind in the country. Here is the figure that stops you. Estimates put the moved earth at roughly 60,000 tons. No wheels, no draft animals, no metal tools. Every basket of it carried on someone's back up a slope that got steeper every year they worked. In 1838, treasure hunters drove a shaft in from the side and another down from the top. Out of that dig came the Grave Creek Stone, a small inscribed tablet that became the most disputed object in Eastern American archaeology. The scholarly weight now falls heavily toward it being a hoax made in the 1800s. It has never been formally settled because the context that would have settled it went out in a wheelbarrow. 60,000 tons survived 2,000 years. What was inside it survived one summer with a shovel. Let me say one thing here, and then I will not bring it up again. Everything on this list I have had to keep in notebooks, the site files, the survey numbers, the alignments somebody measured once, and never published anywhere you can find it. There is a lot that does not fit in a video, so I gathered it into a book, the Appalachian Mysteries collection. It is the chamber orientations, the cairn distributions, the dating disputes laid out side by side, and the maps for the ones you can actually walk to. If you want it, it is there in the description. That is all. Now, number 12. Number 12, the door faces the sun. a stone room built into a hillside with a 5-ton slab over the door and no chimney. You duck to get in. These are scattered by the hundreds through Putnam and Westchester counties in New York, in the hills above the Hudson. The roof is stone, laid in overlapping courses that step inward until they close. No timber, no mortar, holding up its own weight. Inside it's cold and bone dry, about the size of a garden shed. The mainstream reading is root cellar. Colonial storage, dug into a slope to hold a stable temperature. That form is genuinely well documented in New England farming, and it explains a great many of them. Two things resist it. Root cellars don't usually get 5-ton door lintels, and when researchers surveyed doorway orientations across samples of these chambers, the directions clustered inside a narrow solar arc instead of scattering the way they would if builders just followed the hillside. That measurement is real. The claims that Europeans crossed the Atlantic and built these are not supported by any evidence, and the orientation data does not require them. A room can be perfectly colonial and still be built to face something. Number 11. Nobody held this wall. 50 acres enclosed by a 4,600-foot wall and almost no weapons inside it. They call it the Old Stone Fort, outside Manchester, Tennessee. You walk the top of the rampart, 4 to 6 feet above the ground on either side. Below you, on both flanks, the Big Duck and Little Duck rivers have cut gorges into the rock. There's one narrow entrance passage, water on 2 sides, wall across the third. Built between about 80 AD and 550 AD. That's 400 years of intermittent construction. Generations added to this. Settlers looked at a wall on a defensible point and called it a fort. Excavation found essentially no household debris, no weapon caches, no burials. Nobody lived here. Nobody was besieged here. The narrow entrance passage aligns with the summer solstice sunrise. It's not a fort. It's a door you're meant to walk through on one specific morning of the year. The name on the highway sign is the oldest wrong answer in this whole countdown. Everything so far, somebody has at least measured. What follows was aimed at the sky by people watching it across generations. Number 10. The 18-year clock. An earthwork aligned to a cycle in the sky that takes 18.5 years to complete. Stand inside the Great Circle at the Newark Earthworks in Licking County, Ohio, and the walls are 8 feet high around you, enclosing 20 acres of mowed grass. It's quiet in a way that surprises people. The connected octagon, 3,000 feet across, only makes visual sense from the air. Built by the Hopewell people, roughly 100 BC to 400 AD. The United Nations added it to the World Heritage List in 2023. The alignment tracks what astronomers call the lunar standstill, the furthest north and south points where the moon rises, which drift over an 18.5-year cycle and then reverse. To find that pattern, you need observation records spanning more than one working lifetime. Somebody watched, and somebody handed the numbers to the next generation. For over a century, a private country club leased the octagon and used it as a golf course. Earthen walls built to track the moon served as fairway hazards. Getting public access took a lawsuit that ran to the Ohio Supreme Court and was decided in 2022, a World Heritage Site that spent 100 years as a back nine. Number 9. The room that keeps a date. Once a year, the sun comes down this tunnel and lands on the back wall. They call it Calendar 2, 20 feet of dry-laid stone running into a hillside in the Green Mountain foothills near South Woodstock, Vermont. The roof steps inward, course by course, until it closes overhead. Cold, silent, dry, the kind of space that eats sound. It's on private land. Vermont has hundreds of stone chambers, and the state's official position on nearly all of them is colonial root cellar. Farmers built storage into hillsides. That's defensible, and it's probably right most of the time. This one's long axis is oriented to the winter solstice sunrise. That has been measured, checked, and it repeats every December. There's also an inscribed stone set into the wall, which has been argued over to the point of embarrassment. Ancient Irish script, according to some, plow scarring according to others, with no resolution. And the claims of ancient transatlantic builders attached to this site have no evidentiary support. Strip all of that away, and you still have a room that does something specific on one morning in December. The sun doesn't care who wins the argument. Number 8. 67 gaps. 3.5 miles of earthen wall on a bluff, with 67 openings deliberately left in it. This is Fort Ancient in Warren County, Ohio. Stand in one of the gateways. Look out through a gap that could have been closed in an afternoon and never was. The wall runs along the bluff edge above the Little Miami River, following the rim for miles. Hopewell construction, 100 BC to 400 AD. Settlers called it a fort for the same reason they called the Manchester enclosure a fort. A wall on high ground reads as military if that's the only category you've got. Outside the walls, paired stone markers line up with the solstice and equinox sunrises. The gaps aren't weak points in a defense. They're sight lines. The openings are the entire purpose of the structure. This was built over centuries by people who did not live inside it. The United Nations inscribed it in 2023 alongside Newark, and for the same reason. 200 years of calling it a fort, and the walls were an instrument the whole time. What's left was built with mass and precision that outruns the toolkit anybody assumes these builders had. Number 7. 90 tons on legs. A granite slab estimated at 60 to 90 tons, resting on 5 short limestone legs 4 feet off the ground. You can walk underneath it. It is on Titicus Road in North Salem, Westchester County, New York, and standing under it is genuinely uncomfortable. In a way photographs do not convey. The legs look far too small. The mass above your head is roughly that of a loaded freight car. Geologists identify it as a glacial erratic. The ice sheet carried it south, dropped it as it melted, and it happened to settle onto smaller stones already sitting there. That is the professional consensus, and it is very likely correct. Here is the gap. It has never been demonstrated with any mechanism specific to this stone. There is no site-specific study. The consensus is a regional inference applied to one object that happens to sit 20 minutes from the chamber country of Putnam County. The dolmen claims about it are weak, but the boring answer here is an assumption nobody has ever bothered to test. Number 6, where the light ends. The artwork begins a quarter mile past the last daylight. You crawl. This is Mud Glyph Cave, somewhere on the Cumberland Plateau in East Tennessee. The passage narrows and the floor turns to wet clay. Your light is the only light there has ever been in here, besides fire. On the walls, lines drawn with fingertips. On the ceiling, black smears where somebody knocked ash off a burning cane torch. Dark zone cave art in the southeast is a confirmed, documented tradition. Dozens of sites, verified by carbon, dating the torch material itself. Now the part that lands. Nobody lived a half mile into a cave. These weren't shelters. Somebody made a deliberate trip into total darkness through crawlways, carrying fire with a limited burn time, to mark walls that no one would ever stumble across. The precise locations of most of these caves are withheld by law, on purpose. New ones are still being identified. There are drawings in these mountains that almost nobody alive has seen, and that is exactly the intent. Number 5, the street went around it. A 33-foot burial mound with a public library, a road grid, and a strip mall arranged around it. This is the Cryo Mound in South Charleston, West Virginia. You climb concrete stairs up a grass cone with traffic moving on both sides. There's a bench at the top. From up there, you can see a used car lot. It is one of the strangest juxtapositions in American archaeology, and locals walk past it without looking. Built by the Adena. It's the second largest surviving mound in West Virginia. That word, surviving, is doing enormous work. The Kanawha Valley once held one of the densest concentrations of mounds and earthen enclosures documented anywhere on the continent. Dozens of them. Most are simply gone, leveled for streets, rail lines, and housing, usually with no record made at all. Smithsonian crews excavated this one in the 1880s. They took the top off and removed human remains, and repatriation questions from that era of institutional collecting remain unfinished under federal law decades into the process. It survived because one person decided to route a street around it instead of through it. That's the entire reason. Everything else in that valley met a planner who chose differently. The last four are the ones where the physical evidence and the official explanation have never been reconciled. Number 4. The stone washing away. More than 1,500 carved marks on one boulder, and no accepted reading of a single one. You come at Juticula Rock from a wooden platform in the Caney Fork Valley of Jackson County, North Carolina. The rock face slopes toward you, gray and pitted, covered edge to edge in cup-shaped depressions, connecting lines and figures. After rain, water pools in the carvings and they suddenly become legible in a way they aren't when dry. Age estimates run wide. 1500 BC onward is commonly cited, which is a polite way of saying the dating is soft. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians maintains the site and its association with Juticula, the slant-eyed giant of Cherokee tradition. That is the site's own framework, held by the people whose land this is, and it isn't a footnote to somebody's excavation report. The stone is soapstone, soft enough to carve with stone tools, and soft enough that acid rain and human hands are removing the carvings now. It has been reburied at points to slow the damage. High-resolution digital scanning is now the primary conservation strategy. The most densely carved rock east of the Mississippi is dissolving in ordinary weather. The version that outlasts it will be a computer file. Number 3. Piles with no file. A forest crew once logged a note amounting to rock piles. Numerous. Numerous turned out to be more than 100. You're on the upper slopes of the Unicoi Range, in the Cherokee National Forest in Monroe County, Tennessee, off-trail, and the rhododendron is thick enough that you're finding these by walking into them. Knee-high cones of stacked rock, leaf litter packed into the gaps, white quartz visible on the top of several. They keep appearing as you move along the saddle. Land clearing and old timber operations both produced spoil piles across Appalachia. Both explanations are real and both get applied here almost automatically. The problem is the slope. Field piles sit in fields. These sit on grades steeper than 30%. On ground, nobody ever cleared for a crop because you physically cannot plow it. And the pattern repeats the length of the range. Saddles, high points, quartz on top. Federal land managers know they're there. Many have never been formally recorded, and cultural affiliation is contested ground that several tribal nations consider sensitive. The piles aren't hidden. The paperwork is. Number 2. The square and the circle. A square and a circle joined, laid out with geometry accurate to a fraction of a degree by people with no written mathematics. These are the Hopeton earthworks in Ross County, Ohio. Stand in the middle and you may not realize you're inside anything. 2,000 years of plowing has worn the walls down to low swells in a field above the Scioto River. From the ground it reads as pasture. From the air, and from ground-penetrating radar, it's a precise square attached to a precise circle, with parallel earthen walls running off toward the river for over half a mile. The Hopewell built it, 100 BC to 400 AD. Nobody lived inside. It's not defensive. Here's what makes it impossible to wave off. The square and the circle enclose almost exactly the same area. That relationship repeats at Hopewell sites across southern Ohio at different scales, using what amounts to a standard unit of measure. These are not eyeballed, they're surveyed. Somebody was running the same geometry across dozens of sites over centuries with no writing anyone has found. Number 1. Gift shop, no answer. Charcoal from this site has returned radiocarbon dates in the 3rd millennium BC, 2,000 years before Christ, older than most of Stonehenge. 30 wooded acres in Salem, New Hampshire, at the place that markets itself as America's Stonehenge. You walk in past a ticket booth and an alpaca pen. Then the trail turns, and you're among dry-laid stone chambers built into the hillside, roofed with slabs, cold inside. Around the perimeter ridge, standing stones are set at intervals through the trees. Those perimeter stones show astronomical alignments, solstice, and equinox sightlines, and they've been surveyed independently of the people who own and operate the site. That's not a gift shop claim. That's a measurement other parties have taken and confirmed. So you have a site with a genuinely ancient carbon record and genuinely verified alignments. 40 minutes from Boston, open weekends, $9 for adults. Now the hard part, because the honest version matters more than the exciting one. A fire pit does not date the stone sitting above it. Charcoal tells you something burned in a spot. It does not tell you who stacked the wall next to it. And this site has been disturbed twice over. First by 1800s farmers hauling stone away for their own building. Then by an owner in the 1930s who rebuilt and rearranged structures to match his own theories about who put them there. The layers are gone. There is no clean excavation left to run here, ever. The famous grooved slab, sold for decades as a sacrificial table, is most plausibly a colonial lye-leaching stone. The groove channels liquid. That's what you want when you're making soap. Unglamorous. And it fits. And the claims that Phoenicians or Celts crossed the Atlantic and built this have no supporting evidence and never have. Even the name is marketing. The place was called Mystery Hill until somebody realized what sold tickets. What's left is genuinely unresolved. Old carbon, real alignments, a mundane explanation for the headline object, and no way left to sort the pre-colonial from the colonial from the 1930s. Every other site on this list is unresolved because nobody looked hard enough. This one is unresolved because far too many people did, in the wrong order, with shovels. 2 centuries of survey work in these mountains, and at half the places on this list, the honest answer is still that nobody knows who stacked the rock or why. I've made my peace with that. If there's a wall, a mound, a chamber, or a pile of stones near you, the kind everybody local knows about and no sign has ever explained, put it in the comments and tell me where it is. I read them, all of them, and so do a lot of other people who are looking for exactly that. For anyone who wants the rest of it, the maps and the survey numbers and the sites that never fit in a video, that's what the Appalachian Mysteries collection is for. It's down in the description. Go find the one near you and go put your hand on it.